Mr Speaker, I want to welcome you and my parliamentary colleagues, Nicola Willis, fellow leaders in the coalition government, back to Parliament. Of course, my ACT colleagues, we have an enormous amount of work to do, because there are those who will promise that if they're in power, everything is perfect, and yet if they're out of power, only months later, New Zealand turns into some sort of existential hellhole. And I think New Zealanders are smart enough to know that it's not quite like that. What you actually have is a group of people implementing policies to make this a better place for all of us. And we should be judged on the progress that we're making in doing it. And I want to spend a bit of time in this speech talking about why I'm proud to lead a political party ACT that is part of this government that is taking on the real challenges and making good progress in doing it. And I want to start with a set of values. A lot of people will have stories from their summer holiday, and I remember one from many summers ago where I did something I hope every New Zealander will do at some point. I stood at Cape Reinga and looked out at 10,000 kilometres of Pacific Ocean. And there's something about that moment that tells you something about being a Kiwi, because you realise just how brave wave after wave of settlers had to be to choose New Zealand, to choose to come to this country. And I remember asking somebody once, do you think that your ancestors really wanted to be here? And this person told me a story. Her family tried to come from England to New Zealand, but they were shipwrecked on an island in the Indian Ocean. Only 2 family members survived. They found themselves eating birds and whatever they could scrounge together until they were rescued by people who were sort of on the edge of the piracy movement, shall we say. But they did eventually manage to get themselves back to England. Now, this conversation took place in Auckland, so you can probably guess what they did. They scrounged together a few pennies and they got on the next boat to New Zealand, and their descendants are Kiwis to this day. Many New Zealanders have a story like that. Admittedly, not everyone quite as out there as that one. But if we wanted a story that united us, that we are each settlers or descendants of settlers who've taken a big risk to make our home in these islands and to give our children a better tomorrow, then it's a pretty good one. And it comes from our geography. And I saw it one summer standing at Cape Reinga looking at 10,000 kilometres of ocean. But it's also a story that tells us something about ourselves, that we're not people who just lie back and take it. We are pioneers. We're adventurous. We want to make tomorrow better than today through our own efforts. And I heard from people like that all through this summer. A 5-year-old girl just got her uniform, excited about starting school for the first time. I'm not sure that excitement will continue for the whole 13 years based on my experience, but right now she's absolutely pumped. Somebody who's just started a new business, and it's going so well that their goal for the first quarter is to take on their 3rd employee. Or a tradie who was supposed to be coming to fix someone's roof, and they said, look, mate, I'm snowed, but I can have a look at it in May. All of these stories remind me of something about New Zealand, that the spirit that brought us to these islands is still there. All through our lives, we strive to make tomorrow better than today. That's the New Zealand that I think we can be proud of. And it's something, remember, I haven't mentioned when your ancestors got here or which wave of settlers. We all have it. It unites us, and it unites us in having the ability and the power to act. But what is the thing that sometimes holds us back? It's that zero-sum thinking. It's that tall poppy culture. It's that thought that if only we could pull down someone else, our problems would go away. And we heard this in Chloe Swarbrick's speech. There's 2 kinds of people. There's people who, when they find slugs in their bathroom, they clean their bathroom, Chloe. And then there's people, as she said, who start giving names to the slugs in their bathroom. At least there's no slugs in the bathrooms on business class, is there, Chloe? You see, Mr. Speaker, we face a choice in this country. Are we to be a positive-sum society where we... Oh, here we go.
Point of order. Just a moment. I haven't called the member.
Point of order.
A point of order. The Honourable Deborah Russell.
Just that the honourable member was not referring to this honourable member by her full name as is required in this House.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to refer to Chloe Swarbrick by her full name and Deborah Russell, I think it is, who is taking on the big issues. I mean, you can imagine the disappointment of Chris Hipkins back in his office thinking, oh man, I'm trying to climb Mount Everest and this is my Tenzing. It can't be too encouraging, can it? Mr. Speaker, the only good thing I can say is that the tax students at Massey are much better taught these days. That's the one big improvement that we can point to with Deborah Russell. Mr. Speaker, back to this government and our efforts to improve this society, drawing on the values and the qualities that have made this country what it is. One of the things that we have to do is save money and deliver public services more efficiently. And I'm proud to work with our Finance Minister, Nicola Willis, because we have saved literally tens of billions of dollars in 2 budgets, and we've got another one coming this May that I'm quite sure will save even more. And why does that matter? Why does that matter? For the simple reason that when government sucks up money, it is really sucking up resources. When government borrows money, it's competing for the funds that people are borrowing to invest in their business and to buy their first home. And when the government wastes less, very simply, the people eat more. So to be part of a government that is wrestling down record deficits, that is wrestling down enormous interest payments, nearly $10 billion a year just paying the interest on the debt those guys borrowed, I know that we are ensuring that the poor will eat more because the government is wasting less. And it's little things like making sure that we can deliver the school lunch program with the same return rate as Labor's program, but at half the price. And I see there's members indignant about this. Ask the children not what they think, but what they do. And they send them back no more than they did under Labor's program, but we're spending half as much money. Now, if every MP in the government side, opposition side, saved as much money as I saved with that one initiative, we would very nearly be back in surplus. The problem is we're in deficit because they have the opposite effect when in power, and that's why we must keep them right there. We've done the sums as an ACT party, and we calculate if you gave your party vote to ACT in 2023, then the savings of ACT's ministers and policies on your behalf is $57,000 per voter. Now, that's a pretty powerful party vote for ACT, saving $57,000 from the taxpayer. And if you really care about that 5-year-old starting school and the wider young generation in this country, then you will stop borrowing on their account, which is what irresponsible spending means. And that's the point I make to New Zealanders under 40 in this country. You will be paying far more debt off than those over 40. So if you care about the future of this country, you'll balance the books and make a careful use of taxpayer funding. And I'm proud to say that our party and this government is making an enormous contribution to saving for the next generation. But also, if we want to make life more affordable, then we've got to reduce the amount of time tied up in red tape. And I see here Chris Bishop and I see Simon Court. These guys are heroes. If they can halve the number of resource consents applied for in this country and add $3 billion a year to GDP simply by saying, look, if you want to get activity on your own property and it doesn't harm anyone else, you don't need a consent anymore because it's not anyone else's business. If we could just put that simple common sense principle into law, then we can really get cooking with gas in this country, and that is how you save money and you ensure that our society becomes wealthier. That is an enormous bit of progress, and I'm proud to say that resource management reform based in property rights is a change that ACT can proudly claim to have driven. But you see it in anti-money laundering, the bane of the existence, not so much of drug dealers and criminals, although I understand they don't like it, but ordinary people just trying to go about organising their affairs. Nicole McKee is fixing that, just as Brooke Van Velden fixes the Holidays Act, so that people can get paid the right amount. And isn't it interesting, the Labor Party, how often do they get in behind Brooke Van Velden ensuring that workers will get paid the right amount? Do you hear any praise? Do you hear any positivity? Of course you don't, but Brooke Van Velden is doing it, and she's fixing employment law so that if, for example, you sexually harass someone in the workplace and you get fired, you can't then take a claim against your employer on a technicality. That's been the disgraceful reality of unbalanced employment law that Brooke Van Velden is fixing so businesses can get on with actually producing. And then we talk about those rental ones. If they're Green voters, they're busy naming their slugs, we've just heard from the Green Party. But we have ensured that rents are down in real terms. And how have we done that? Well, first of all, we've replied the most... Well, Chloe Swarbrick says people are leaving the country. If she thinks that's the answer, she should join them. That'd be the most popular thing she'd ever done. Mr. Speaker, what we have done in actual fact is applied the same principles of tax law to rental property as any other business. Interest is an expense and you can deduct it from your income for tax purposes. There's no magic, and it's not a tax cut for landlords any more than putting tax on cigarettes as a tax on dairy owners. Most taxes, in the end, fall on the end user, and in the case of taxing rental property, the tax was falling on the people trying to rent homes in an inelastic market, and that's why getting rid of that tax has ensured that rents have fallen in real terms. So has reforming the Residential Tenancies Act. Reforming the Residential Tenancies Act as though landlords might actually be the property owner, meaning that they can actually get rid of someone troublesome. Well, that's actually ensured that people are more willing to enter the market, and ironically, tenants have more choice. This is how a real market works in a society where people are trying to make a difference in their own lives and asking, how can we make tomorrow better than today, rather than asking government to solve every problem. Mr. Speaker, we've also ensured that actually producing a buck is easier too, because that's the other side of being able to afford things. Yes, we've dealt with taxes and red tape and regulation, making it easier to build homes and rent it out, making it easier to build supermarkets so that people can have a more affordable life in this country. That's all true. We have done all of that. But we've also made it easier to deduct your tax when you buy new plant and equipment in your business. We are also systematically dismantling the red tape and the regulation, such as the significant natural areas. We've got rid of the climate policy that would have driven sheep and beef farmers out of business so production could happen overseas to the benefit of foreign farmers who emit more than hardworking and efficient New Zealand ones. We've also ensured that you're going to be able to work as a contractor and have clarity about how that contract works. Again, Brook van Velden making it easier to do business. These are just some of the things that this government is doing in the spirit of our founding and our origin story as a country to make it easier for people to provide for themselves and spend less time paying taxes that government waste and complying with rules that don't actually make the boat go faster. But there's no point being able to afford your groceries if someone nicks them on the way home. And in this country, we for too long tried an experiment that was almost too stupid to be true. But you remember who was in power at the time. They decided that if only we were kinder to criminals and we waited long enough, eventually they would be kind back. You see, the others have kind of moved on, but Te Pāti Māori, they are still continuing on in this vein. I saw the other day, I thought, this must be AI. They must be using the same apps as Chloe Swarbrick writes the speeches with. They had something on their Facebook that said, Te Pāti Māori will get rid of prisons. And I thought to myself, number one, why would they do that when Māori are the biggest victims of crime? And number two, are they going to get rid of the prisons for everyone? Would they release the Christchurch terrorist? I'd love to hear the Māori Party member get up and answer that question. Would they let a white supremacist murderer out of prison as part of their policy? Or are there some standards? And if there are, why don't they use them to protect everybody else who is a victim of sexual and violent crime in this society? What this government's done, and Nicole McKee's here, we've reintroduced 3 strikes. She's also ensured a 20% drop in the time taken to get through the criminal courts, because justice delayed is justice denied, and there's far more coming where that was. We've seen a 16% drop in youth crime, and Karen Chua has shown it is possible to run an Oranga Tamariki facility without KFC. That's right, OT without KFC is what this government is delivering with our Minister for Children, Karen Chua, and incidents and assaults in those facilities has gone down because she set some basic rules and because she cares. You know, Karen Chua has been to all 58, I believe, or very close already, to all 58 Oranga Tamariki facilities, because for once we have somebody who embodies that story of suffering at the bottom of this system and rising to the top to fix it for all the others. And that, for me, is a true New Zealand hero in Karen Chua. Yeah. Mr. Speaker, we can now evict people from Kāinga Ora if they are harassing their neighbours. Imagine those basic values that if the state gives you a house at a significant discount, you actually have to be kind to the rest of the community because you're benefiting from this community spirit. It may seem normal and commonsensical to many people, but it was not the norm. Whereas an electorate MP, I'd hear people abused to within an inch of their life, the people doing unmentionable things that could get me kicked out of Parliament if I told you what they were, Mr. Speaker. Now, if they do it, they get kicked out because guess what? There's other people waiting in the queue, and that queue is shrinking because KO is finally being managed competently. Mr. Speaker, all of these policies, and I've just been giving you a small selection, really just the ones that have come into mind as I've been speaking to you, those policies are all grounded in the most basic set of values. And that set of values outlines the difference between this side of the House and that side of the House. On this side of the House, we believe in that origin story, that if we hadn't made a brave journey, we or our ancestors hadn't settled here, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be Kiwis. And therefore, what it means to be a Kiwi is to have ambition, to be adventurous, to be a pioneer, to believe that life isn't like bad weather. We can change it through our actions and our choices, that we can choose a brighter future, we can fix the things that matter and find ourselves in the greatest little country on earth. But it's all going to depend on asking who has acted with integrity, who has been consistent on the policies, not just in the last year, in many cases for the last 10 years, when others may have taken 1 or 2 or more positions on the same issue in the same period. The ACT Party has advanced these values, that each Kiwi has the right and the obligation to make a difference in their own life, year after year, speech after speech, debate after debate. And quietly, as I stand here today after 2 years in government, I'm reminded of another great Kiwi saying or song, and it's this: I feel, as we go into 2026, now we're getting somewhere. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.